For decades, we were told to avoid eggs, that they were high in cholesterol, that they'll clog your arteries and raise your risk of a heart attack. So most people listened. They gave up egg yolks, they switched to egg whites, or they stopped eating eggs altogether. But what if that advice was wrong? What if eggs weren't the problem, but the science was? In this video, I'm going to show you why you don't need to fear eggs, what the newest research actually says about them, and your heart, which eggs are the healthiest, and actually how to cook them. And at the very end, you'll learn what eggs actually do to cholesterol. You might be surprised. By the way, if you're looking for a clear path to avoid a heart attack, check out my free 7-step heart attack prevention protocol. There's a link in the description below. Now, before we get into the science, the evidence, let me tell you about one of my patients. I helped heal his heart disease. Let's call him Mark. He's 54. He works a desk job. He's fairly healthy. He walks a few times a week, tries to eat right. And for years, he's been avoiding eggs. His doctor told him they were bad for his cholesterol, so he gave them up. Eggs used to be one of his favorite foods, especially in the morning, like me. But he stopped cold turkey, replacing them with oatmeal and toast. For a while, he thought he was doing the right thing, but year after year, his cholesterol just kept going up. He felt more tired in the afternoons and after meals. And at his last checkup, his triglycerides were elevated for the first time, and his HDL was starting to creep lower and lower. That's when he reached out to us. To Mark's surprise, we told him he didn't need to avoid eggs. He actually needed to start including them back in his breakfast. That's what we'll talk about next. Let's look at how the egg myth started in the first place and why it lasted so long. That fear goes all the way back to the 1960s. At that time, heart disease was rising fast. Doctors and scientists were scrambling to figure out why. One theory stood out, the cholesterol theory. It said cholesterol in food raises cholesterol in your blood, and that high cholesterol in your blood causes heart disease. So the thinking was very simple. Cut the cholesterol out of the diet and you'd cut heart disease. On paper, it made a lot of sense. Like a lot of stuff that you hear and see, especially on social media like YouTube. But in real life, it may not hold up. And this one didn't, this cholesterol theory. Here's why. Your body doesn't just take in cholesterol from food. It makes more cholesterol than you eat. In fact, your liver produces most of the cholesterol in your body. It adjusts how much it makes based on what you eat. So if you eat more cholesterol, your liver makes less. If you eat less cholesterol, your liver makes more. It's a balancing system, not a straight line. But in the 60s and 70s, they obviously didn't know that. It just wasn't understood. And there was one man who pushed this diet cholesterol theory harder than anyone else, or at least he was more effective at getting it actually put into law. His name was Ancel Keys. He published a study that seemed to show a link between saturated fat, cholesterol, and heart disease. And he used that study to convince governments and health organizations to change the food guidelines. When they did, that forced a lot of people to quit eating eggs. Now, there's just one problem. The evidence, the data he used, left out countries that didn't fit his theory. He just left it out. He only included the ones that helped prove his point. So it sounded good to him, he left it in. If it didn't sound good to him, he took it out. That's not ethical. So where did the advice to avoid eggs come from? Where did he get it? It came from this mindset. Cholesterol is bad. Eggs have cholesterol, so therefore eggs must be bad. The reason this idea stuck wasn't just the science. It was the story, the logic. It was easy to understand. In fact, it was too easy. Doctors, journalists, and policymakers all repeated the very same message. Cholesterol's bad, fat's bad, eggs are bad. It sounded logical. It was simple enough to fit in a headline. And once it became official government policy in the 1970s, it turned into nutrition gospel. But here's the catch. Food companies loved it. When eggs, meat, butter, other sources of fat or cholesterol were labeled as dangerous, that opened the door for low-fat cereals, margarines, and processed foods. And that market exploded, and it gave the cholesterol theory even more momentum. Meanwhile, evidence that contradicted the cholesterol theory was just ignored or dismissed. It happened. For decades, studies showed no link between cholesterol in the diet and heart disease, but these studies were treated as outliers. So the egg myth survived, not because it was true, but because it was simple. It was also profitable, and it was repeated so often that it just felt like common sense. It wasn't until much later, larger, better studies came along, the kind we have today, that we could finally see the truth. Eggs were never the problem. One of the most important studies on this topic came out very recently, a massive review of the best evidence we have. And here's what it found. Eating eggs does not increase your risk of heart disease. It doesn't raise your risk of dying from heart disease. Even if you're eating eggs every day, an egg a day, the risk stays the same. And in some cases, it actually goes down. In fact, the researchers found that for people who ate even an egg a day, the risk of heart disease did not increase at all, no matter their age, their gender, or where they lived in the world. They also looked at people who ate even more than an egg a day, closer to 2 eggs a day, and even there, the results did not show an increase in risk, especially when the eggs were part of an otherwise healthy diet, not mixed with white bread, toast, processed foods, cereals, oatmeal. And here's something else they found. The quality of the diet around the eggs really matters more than the eggs themselves. So it's not about the eggs, it's about what you eat with the eggs. Eggs with vegetables and healthy fats, those are not a problem. Eggs inside a fast food breakfast sandwich with a bunch of bread, that's a different story. The study also found regional differences. In Western countries, for example, like the U.S. and Europe, where eggs are often eaten with processed meats, especially with refined carbs, like your Egg McMuffin, the health outcomes were worse. And again, you're adding breads and toast. But in countries where eggs were part of the traditional diets, like in parts of Asia or South America, there was no harm. And in some cases, even small benefits. What that tells us is this. Eggs are not the enemy. The real problem foods here are refined carbohydrates, added sugars like fructose, and maybe even trans fats. Here's the surprising part. Even the cholesterol you eat might not be as bad as you've been told. Back in 2015, the dietary guidelines for Americans made a major change. For the first time in decades, they removed the limit on dietary cholesterol. Their exact words were, cholesterol is not a nutrient of concern for overconsumption. That sounds like a person of concern, a suspect of concern in a murder mystery. And that's exactly what we're talking about. Even the federal guidelines in the U.S. removed cholesterol in 2015. We're talking 10 years ago now. And so many people still don't even know that yet. Saying cholesterol is not a nutrient of concern for overconsumption. Even the federal government understands that at this point. Now, that was a turning point. For years, people were told to limit eggs to no more than 3 per week. But by 2015, the evidence was just too strong to ignore. Cholesterol in food was not the main driver of cholesterol in the blood. And we're not going to get into the debate on whether cholesterol in the blood is actually dangerous or not. We'll leave that for another video. In 2020, the American Heart Association reinforced that message about cholesterol in the diet. After reviewing all the best available studies, they concluded cholesterol from foods like eggs has very little impact on blood cholesterol anyway, for most people. So the message is clear. The cholesterol in eggs is not the main villain. It's not the villain it was once made out to be. No matter what your position is on blood cholesterol, whether you think it's a risk factor or not, it doesn't matter because eggs do not change the level of cholesterol in your blood. When we reviewed Mark's case, a man who'd cut out eggs completely, this research helped us take a different approach. We looked at his full picture, his diet, his inflammation inside his bloodstream, his blood sugar, which was driving his inflammation, his triglycerides, which was responding to it and helping drive it, his lifestyle. And when we added eggs back, things began to improve. He felt fuller in the morning, more steady during the day. And when we looked at his labs, we saw a couple of critical improvements. His triglycerides went down. His HDL cholesterol, the good cholesterol, I mentioned that a few minutes ago, it came up. He stops some of the carbs in his diet. He adds eggs back, and the good cholesterol goes up. The bad cholesterol goes down. The triglycerides go down. Even it was more surprising for him. His LDL cholesterol and ApoB didn't rise. They, again, as I said, went down. That's why the new science matters, because the advice we give people has consequences. For years, we scared people away from one of the most nutrient-rich, affordable, and accessible foods on the planet. Today, the evidence is clear. The data are clear. Eggs do not cause heart disease. Actually, eggs are one of the healthiest foods available. Here's what they have inside. First, protein. Each egg has about 6 or 7 grams of high-quality protein, the kind your body absorbs and uses easily. That's important for keeping muscle as you get older, especially when trying to prevent frailty, falls, slow recovery. And remember again, most people don't understand this. It just doesn't hit their radar. Muscle is even more important for yet a different reason. Muscle is an endocrine tissue because it is your most important safety valve, internal safety valve against prediabetes, metabolic disease, diabetes, whether it's diagnosed or not. So it's very healthy as we age to have healthy muscle. Back to eggs. Next, choline. Choline is a nutrient most people don't really get enough of. It's essential for your brain, your liver, and your metabolism. Choline helps you make acetylcholine or acetylcholine, depending on how you pronounce it. It's a brain chemical that supports memory and thinking. It also helps your liver process fat, and it keeps your metabolism running smoothly. One large egg gives you about 150 milligrams of choline. The recommended daily amount is about 425 milligrams for women and 550 milligrams for men. So that means just 2 eggs can give you more than half of what you need for the whole day. And then there's vitamin D. Most people are low in vitamin D, especially older adults. Egg yolks naturally contain it, and while the amount isn't as high as a supplement, it still adds up. Vitamin D supports your immune system, your bones, and even your mood. Eggs are also one of the few foods that contain lutein and zeaxanthin. Those are antioxidants. They protect your eyes. They help lower the risk of age-related vision loss, like macular degeneration. You don't need a lot of these, but you do need them, and you need them consistently. Eggs are an easy way to get both. And let's not forget the B vitamins, especially B12. This supports energy and brain health. Older adults often don't absorb B12 well from food, but eggs are still one of the most reliable natural sources. In short, eggs give your body the building blocks it needs. They support your muscles, your brain, your metabolism, your vision, and your overall energy, all in one simple food. Now I'll show you how to eat and cook eggs to get the most benefit and avoid the common mistakes that cancel out their nutrients. Because if you do cook them wrong or pair them with the wrong foods, you lose a lot of the benefits that they bring. The first thing I told Mark was this: start by choosing the right kind of eggs. Not all eggs are created equal. You'll hear a bunch of names and see a bunch of labels: cage-free, free-range, pasture-raised, omega-3 enriched, and all that sounds confusing. You say, well, let's just get some basic eggs. No, there is a difference. And let me break it down, what these terms actually mean and what you should look for. So most of the eggs in the U.S. still come from conventional caged hens. These birds spend their lives in small enclosures, indoors, with very little room to move. They're fed a standard corn and soy diet. These eggs are the cheapest and the easiest to find, but they're also lower in certain nutrients like omega-3 fats and antioxidants like vitamin E. And that's important. Cage-free eggs sounds better. They're not in the cage anymore, right? Well, in a way it is better, but cage-free hens really aren't kept in individual cages, but they still live indoors, usually in crowded barns. They can move around a little bit more, but they don't have outdoor access, which they need. Nutritionally, cage-free eggs are just not that much different from regular eggs. Free-range eggs takes it a step further. Maybe that sounds a lot better. These hens live in barns still, but are supposed to have some access to the outdoors. That's what free range means. The problem is the outdoor space can be very limited, and not all birds actually go outside. So free range eggs often sounds better than it really is. Still, when hens do forage outdoors, their diet is a little bit more varied, and that can boost the nutrient content of the eggs. Bottom line, I don't think free range eggs are worth it. That's the bottom line. Now, what does make a difference? Pasture-raised. Pasture-raised is where the real difference shows up. Pasture-raised hens spend most of their lives outside with at least 108 square feet of space per bird, per hen. They forage on grass, seeds, insects, and yes, maybe even worms. Because of that natural diet, their eggs are richer in omega-3 fatty acids. They're richer in vitamin D3, in antioxidants. One large analysis showed pasture-raised eggs can have twice as much vitamin E and more than twice as much omega-3s compared to conventional eggs. The yolks are often darker yellow, even orange. That's a good sign. It reflects the higher carotenoid content, which can also reflect higher contents of vitamin D omega-3s. Then, speaking of omega-3s, there are specifically enriched, omega-3 enriched eggs. Now, these are different. These are hens that are fed flaxseed, chia seed, even fish oil. That boosts the omega-3 content in their eggs, even if the hens are not pasture-raised. For people who don't eat fatty fish, these eggs can be a simple way to get more omega-3s. So, which eggs are the best? From a health standpoint, pasture-raised eggs are the most nutrient-dense. They give you more vitamins. They give you more antioxidants and a better balance of fats. Omega-3 enriched eggs are also a good choice, especially if you don't eat fish. Free-range and cage-free really don't add much, so they're not worth the extra money. Unless the hens actually spend time outdoors, and there's no way you're going to know that from just that label. Conventional eggs, they're not as nutrient-rich, but again, they're still a solid source of high-quality protein and choline, and a heck of a lot better than toast and just 180 degrees, worlds better than cereals. The next thing I told Mark, let's go back to him for a second. I told him keep the heat low. We're starting to talk about how to cook them now. Gentle cooking is better. When you fry eggs at high heat, or you cook them until they're brown and crispy, it changes the cholesterol inside the yolk. That cholesterol becomes oxidized, and oxidized cholesterol is very different. It's important. It's different from the kind that your body makes naturally. Oxidized cholesterol has been linked to inflammation and artery damage. This doesn't mean you need to eat raw eggs. It just means don't overdo the heat. So again, don't overreact and say, I'm just going to eat them raw. That's not what you do. Try boiling them or poaching them or scrambling slowly over low heat. These methods preserve nutrients and keep the oxidation low. A 2023 study compared different cooking styles and found that low heat methods, especially poaching, helped preserve more antioxidants like lutein and zeaxanthin. It's also important to pay attention to what you're cooking the eggs with. A lot of people cook eggs in oil and then serve them with toast or processed breakfast meats or cereals, and just don't go there. That's not a healthy meal. The problem isn't the eggs, it's everything around them. So if your breakfast is eggs, toast, and juices, you're setting yourself up for a blood sugar spike, followed by inflammation and a bunch of insulin. Here's what I recommend instead. Cook your eggs in butter, which holds up well at cooking temperatures, or better yet, just boil your eggs. You can store them for a long time that way. Just boil a lot of them and keep them in your fridge. Pair them with vegetables like spinach, mushrooms, or tomatoes. Add some fiber, a healthy fat like avocado, or sprinkle some flaxseed. And if you want, it's fine to include some good quality bacon or sausage on occasion. And yeah, I'll get a bunch of haters for that, but I eat good quality sausage and bacon. That kind of combination helps lower inflammation, supports digestion, keeps your blood sugar stable. It doesn't have this insulin and blood sugar roller coaster. So when Mark tried that, he started feeling better. He got off of this blood sugar and insulin roller coaster. Now, I have one more nugget of information for you. Remember I told you eggs do something surprising to your cholesterol? We'll talk about it next. But before we do, I want to share something important with you. If you're trying to improve your health and avoid heart attacks, strokes, maybe have metabolic disease or markers of metabolic disease and your doctor's just not getting it, and you feel frustrated with your current care or overwhelmed by all the conflicting online advice, you're not alone. This stuff is hard. I've been through the same journey myself. Years ago, I had to dig deep and educate myself just to understand what was really happening inside my own body. With the right changes, I was able to reverse arterial plaque and lower my own heart attack risk. Let me be clear. It isn't something I recommend doing on your own because of the reasons that I just discussed. It's hard. It can be confusing. Honestly, it's dangerous without the right support. And here's something that most people don't know. Fewer than 0.5% of doctors in the U.S. specialize in preventive medicine. Only about a dozen of the doctors in the country have been licensed to practice in all 50 states. I'm part of both of those. And so if it was hard for me to figure this out, you can pretty well trust it's going to be hard for most people. So that's why I came back. That's why I'm helping. But I can't help everybody on my own. There's been so much demand from the channel. I've personally trained a team of clinical advisors. They work with me every day, helping people improve their health and avoid heart attacks through lifestyle first care. If you're ready to take that next step, just give us a call, 859-721-1414. That's 859-721-1414. Or click the link in the description to learn more. We'll walk you through the options and find something that fits your goals and your situations. And if you're not ready yet, that's okay. I've created a free 7-step heart attack prevention protocol, and you can download it using the link below. It's the perfect place to start. At least it'll get you to where you can understand a lot of what your doctor needs to be thinking, and it can help you have a much more intelligent, informed conversation with your doctor. There was a study published in Food and Function in 2013. It showed eggs can change the type of cholesterol particles in your blood. Instead of creating small, dense particles, the story behind those, the narrative is that they slip into artery walls, trigger inflammation, and form plaque. And yes, people that have these small, dense particles do have more risk. It's probably something else. It's probably an issue in terms of metabolic disease and formation, how the particles are formed. Eggs shift those particles. No matter what the reality is for the mechanism, eggs shift those particles towards the larger, lighter forms that are less dangerous. In other words, as you start eating eggs, you're going to see these small, dense decrease and the large, fluffy, healthy LDL increase. So that means eggs don't just avoid making things worse. They actually improve your cholesterol pattern in a way that lowers risk. Now, if you're not familiar with this whole discussion about what we call fractionation, those specific cholesterol patterns, most doctors don't do those. Again, we do those for our patients to help them understand what's going on in terms of their diet and their risk. So the truth is, it's not just about how much cholesterol you have. It's about the quality of that cholesterol. And eggs can help tip the balance in your favor. If you really want to know how to avoid heart attacks, heart disease, beyond just lowering your cholesterol, check this video right here.